I want to say I almost died. That may be a little drastic, but not necessarily. So when I was in college, this was like, I don't know, 23 years ago, something like that. We used to have these outings, these college-sponsored outings. You could grab a friend, grab a date, go on these activities. My friends were going canoeing and they wanted me to come along. They were like, hey, Jennifer doesn't have anybody to go with her. Would you mind going with Jennifer and we'll go canoeing together? And I was like, sure, that'd be great. So we signed up to go canoeing, right? Got there, and this just was the pattern forming at the launch point. Everybody was putting the date in the front, the girl in the front of the canoe, and then they would push the canoe into the water and then jump on the back, and then we would start paddling in this big group, right? So I told Jennifer, hey, jump in the canoe. And the thing you have to know about this arrangement is that I was not a very big person. I've never been that tall, and in college I was not very heavy either. I've worked on that substantially since then. But in college I was not very substantial. So I was a short little twig of a guy. Jennifer, on the other hand, was a larger girl. She was definitely taller than me, and she had some girth. She was several of me. We'll say that, okay? And I'm not picking on her or anybody that happens to weigh a little more instead of a little less. That's totally fine. But to appreciate this story, you have to understand this, okay? So she gets in the canoe in the front. I get in the back and I start pushing it in just like all the other guys are doing, except my feet are moving and the sand is flying up and the canoe is not going anywhere. So I had to say, hey, Jennifer, can you get out of the canoe real quick? So she got back out of the canoe, I pushed it into the water, and we started off. Everybody's canoes are riding along the water, pretty much as you would expect a canoe to look. Our canoe's kind of doing this a little bit. She's in the front, okay, I'm in the back. And if you know anything about canoeing, and I'm no expert, but having more weight in the front than the back, it does not make it easier to steer. I feel like I'm kind of sitting out of the water a little, trying to get my paddle down in there. And I'm doing my best to navigate down this river. And Jennifer, to add on to this, she's very nervous, okay? So she's in the canoe, she's very nervous about tipping over, she's nervous about every little rock and twig that comes up in the stream, okay? And I'm trying to push around, so I'll see a log coming up and I've gotta get the canoe turned around so I can get, past it. And we're doing okay. We're doing all right. We're getting it done, going down the river, but it's work, right? And we come around this bend, and the river it curves gently off to the left. So there's a little sandbank on the left side, and then the right side's all wooded and brushy. We're just supposed to follow it around to the left. And I get the canoe turned to the way it's supposed to be turned, but I notice that we're not going in the direction that we've turned. We're not going in the direction we're facing. We're still going where the river wants to take us. And I look ahead to see where the river's taking us, and there's a bunch of like logs and brush like all stacked up in one spot. And I realize that the current like sucks towards this one spot. I don't know what it is about the physics of how the river is right there, but everything's like going into that one spot, right? And we're headed right towards it. So I see this coming, and I'm trying to paddle even harder, right, to get us away from this impending danger where we're going to get sucked up against all these logs. Jennifer sees it coming too. She's nervous about it. We pass under an overhanging branch, and it's down, just hanging, dangling right over where we go. There's the very last bit of the branch, which is basically a twig at this point. And she reaches up to grab that twig, and I'm thinking to myself, don't do that. Don't, no! But she grabs the twig, and then of course holds on to the twig. Canoe keeps going. She's now staying up here. And so the next thing that happens, we flip over into the river. It's very deep right there. There's no like touching the bottom or whatever. We flip over into the river right there. The next thing I know, we are smashed up against that spot in the river where all the logs are piled up right there. I have no idea where the canoe is. It's not present. Jennifer and I are hanging on like this in the water, our hands over some logs. I don't remember the time between the canoe flipping over and winding up on those logs. I just know we went under, and the next thing I know, we're doing this. And so we're hanging there, trying to get our bearings, figure out what's going on, and I realize that as I'm hanging there, I'm getting lower and lower in the water. It's sucking me under, and I look down in the water, and it goes down for quite a ways. There's logs and things that are pulled underneath there, and I realize I'm going to get sucked under. I'm going to get pulled under the water and tangled up. I'm going to get pulled right down into the middle of this log jam, several feet under the water. And that knowledge lights a fire, and I scramble up over the logs and pull myself out. Jennifer is not able to do that, so she's hanging on for dear life, fighting the current. I didn't have the ability to help her where she was at. I couldn't get her up or out, and folks arrived fairly quickly. They got her on the edge of a canoe, got her over to the other side of the bank. Things were fine. And then we start looking for our canoe. Where was it? It was disappeared. We looked down. There it is, several feet under the water. It had gotten sucked under this log jam and was just stuck under the water. There was no pulling it back out because the current was so strong right there. So we ended up pushing it through. I don't even remember how we managed to do that. There were several people helping at that point. You know, we were attracting a little bit of attention. And we got the canoe pushed up the other side. It popped out. We got it over to the beach, emptied out, and ready to get in and journey on again. And Jennifer was not having it. It was too traumatic for her. She couldn't do it. She couldn't get back in. She wasn't going to do it. She was traumatized. I'm a young, awkward college kid. I didn't know what to do, you know. So there I am. She won't get back in the canoe with me. She ended up riding in the middle of the chaperone's canoe. I don't think they were having that great of a day. That lady chap didn't even want to be there, and this was not adding any color or excitement of any positive variety to her life. They're like, okay, we'll take her. She'll just ride with us. You can canoe back by yourself. So I did. I got in the canoe, canoed the rest of the way by myself. And oddly enough, when I got in the canoe by myself, I found it a breeze to navigate around the river and go wherever I wanted to go, get the canoe to do what I wanted to do. I was like, oh, canoeing's not that hard after all. Oh my goodness. Canoed back by myself. We got our whole group back together. Everything was fine. But I will never forget that. Watching her, I can see it in my mind, crystal clear, left hand going up in front of me, grabbing that little twig, me thinking, no, turning over, and then the next thing I know, we're holding onto the logs like this, trying to figure out what is going on, where am I, what am I doing? Oh, I'm getting lower and lower in the water. I'm going to die. And then coming up out of it. Life can go sideways in the blink of an eye. And often as a result of one of our poor decisions. Maybe our decision, maybe someone else's poor decision. And the only thing you can do in that moment when life is upside down and you find yourself hanging on for dear life is hang on, figure out which direction you need to go, you need to move, start moving that way, take advantage of help, and realize that all of our lives are held in the hand of God. It's my thought for today. Do with it what you will.